Good everyone. I'm chairing the meeting today and for Graham. Graham's is sick, so he was here this morning but had to leave unfortunately. So at this stage we'll go into apologies, which is obviously Graham. If anyone else has got any apologies. No? Okay. Moved by Bill and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Declarations of interest. We got any declarations of interest? Confirmation of non-confidential minutes. Moved by Councillor Burdett. Seconded by Malcolm. Councillor McLean. All right. Okay. Is there any comments on the minutes? Ordinary meeting of the 11th. We've got the action sheet. I will move the minutes. Yeah, sorry. Being a bit new to this role, there's going to be a few hiccups, so I'll be open for any advice as we go through, please, or any help. It'll be fantastic. Yeah. Okay. All those in favour of the minutes? Right. Action sheet. Anything on the action sheet that anyone wants to comment about?
Sorry. Re the condition of the car park at East Cape. Where are we with that?
Yeah, sorry, just ask that question just through the chair. Our staff have checked it. We just wanted to confirm we have the areas, because we've gone right down to the end of the East Cape Road, and maybe that's what where the toilet is. Is that the correct site? Because I've been down there myself when I had inspected some of the East Cape Road about 3 weeks ago, and well, we found it fit for purpose. That was me. The road was okay, is that what you're saying? Yes, the road was okay.
Councillor Seymour, yeah?
Yeah, thank you. The point that was made, and I think it might be the background to this, was a request to extend the culvert, because in the dark, and I happen to witness this myself, when people are there first thing in the morning and they try to turn and the only place where there's one culvert, someone frequently, and it happened that day, end up with one wheel in the water table, which is quite a significant water table. So it was actually about extending the cord for the culvert, which is actually on the road. I was told once it was private property and nothing to be done about it, but it's actually out on the part that is available to the public to use, whoever status that is. And it just needs to be made a little wider so that it's safe for people, because they're there in the dark, and that's what they go there for at dawn. So if we could have that looked at, please.
Yeah.
It's noted.
Well, that's what was meant. It's been mentioned quite specifically. It was the culvert, and it's just disappointing when consistent messages don't get relayed.
Mr. Chairman, suggest they have a conversation with what Campbell Jews. He tells me that the road's in a shocking state. I put in a request the other day, and I did say to him, this is at a tangi, don't you make a liar of me.
Just a reply. Yeah, that's why we there were some issues on State Highway 35 I wanted to look at. So we also took the opportunity to go down East Cape Road to the end to look at that. So it's certainly the sealed part, and that's where we've got the forestry is coming out of that area. So it's programmed for repairs. I just can't give you the promise when it's going to get done.
Okay, moving on. Governance sheet. Anyone want to comment about the governance sheet? Everyone's all happy there? Okay, we've got leave of absence, acknowledgement and tributes, public input and petitions, none. Extraordinary business. Anyone extraordinary business? Notice of motion, adjourned business, and reports of the Chief Executive and staff. So we'll move on from that. We've got the first report, decision report, emergency works contract, page 12.
Chairman, I have you move. Great initiative. Let's get it going.
Yep, it's a standard contract, and
In moving it, Mr. Chairman, I have one question. Is there a schedule that the successful tenderer will be asked to work to? And I've read the document and I see one or two things are prioritised, but I would hope to think that the repairs to the road to Waimar might be right at the front end of the work, since that's been like that for some months, many months.
Just to reply, yes, next week, well, if the paper gets approved next week, Mark will be sitting down with the program, with Fulton Hogan, to discuss the program. There are other sites, basically, we've got time restraints because of the fresh water plan, we're not allowed to go into that, but other than that. But the seawall is one of the top priorities.
It needs to be. I mean, with respect, you know, we all worked hard to get a fresh water plan, but I would hate to think that that ended up as a priority over the safety of private individuals using that road, because that has been really bad, and it's one very large hole in that road, or pieces of sea erosion. So I think we would have a revolt from our community if we start prioritising the freshwater plan over those kind of things where the public have waited for quite a long time, because that's been raised a number of times at the community meeting in Tukumara Bay. Thank you.
all right, is there any other comments on this report?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chair. In the Fulton Hogan contract, page 13, item 4, that contract includes the fencing, because I see the fencing applicant didn't come up to standard, so does Fulton Hogan take a vote?
So this paper was moved by Councillor Seymour, seconded by Councillor Burdett. All those in... Oh, Councillor Stolz, my apologies. Yeah. All those in favour? All right, we'll move to page 16, Paraku landfill update. Okay, we'll take the paper as read. And is there any comments at all from councillors? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, just a question, and I know there's how we're dealing with this is a standard procedure that you collect the leachate and then spray it over the thing and keep doing that. How long do you keep going on that process? Because, you know, we've been doing that for many years already. Is there an opportunity that sometime in the future you actually take that leachate and don't spray it over the thing, but you actually deal with it in a different way? I mean, that seems to me more environmentally acceptable in the long run. I know that there are issues around doing that, but, you know, this is just seems to be perpetual. We go on forever doing this. Can you answer that question, please? Somebody.
Yes, in response, we've had Tonkin and Taylor, our consultants, have a look at what we're doing, and it is a proven method of dispersing the leachate. It's used throughout New Zealand for that purpose, and some of the options that we're looking at in the future around ponds and aeration will also help around dispersing of the ammonia and stuff like that. So yeah, we're using their advice around how best to irrigate our leachate.
On top of that, I've got a question too. I mean, just at the end of the day, what is the ultimate desire of this land, and when would it be ready for that desire? you know, I mean, bearing in mind it's been an ex-landfill, and is it ever going to be usable as a productive piece of land of any sort?
So through you, Chair, with the landfill, these landfills take a significant amount of time to make them safe and for them to stop leaching. So inside that leachate are a number of known contaminants that need to be managed within that landfill site that's there now. The other part with the landfill is it has the cap that's on it, but it is also subsiding and it will continue to move for quite a long time. As landfills, especially of this era, they settle, and that takes quite a lot of time as they start to break down internally. So they're quite a complex thing to actually manage. An aftercare program for a landfill can last for a significant amount of time. At best, what we can do is contain the site and make sure that we manage it in a way that they does stop leaching over time, and the chemicals will actually slowly start to do that. Internationally, if you look at the case studies of landfills this time, it takes around 60 years for them to actually start reaching an equilibrium where it comes to the contaminants that are coming out of them, but then also for them to actually start to be managed in a sustainable way. They've stopped moving, you've got new contaminants coming out, and it's starting to self-contain. As Dwayne was saying, there are different ways you can manage the leachate, but at the moment, as they investigate those options, the best one we have is to keep that leachate and those contaminants within the footprint of the landfill that we have at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Stolz.
I had two questions around the financial budget and the legal stuff. So you state in the report in number 19 that MFE funding options are being assessed for potential works. And what are the options here? I see in number 12 that you talk about future remedial measures being considered, leachate, irrigation and improvement. So I was just wondering, is that what you would be looking for external funding, or are those options in number 12 already included in our budget? And if it is included in our budget, what do we plan to do with potential new money from MFE?
In response, the options for 12 are not in that budget. They're a future option for us to consider moving forward. Sorry, I wasn't sure.
So we will do those if we get the money from MFE.
Yeah.
We will do number 12.
Or any of the other options.
And then just a last question about the legal, where we know, and we've known for quite some time, that we're non-compliant. What time, I forgot, we have spoken about this before, but what is the time frame to get the landfill to be compliant? Because it's our landfill, our stuff should be compliant. So I was just wondering, how do we work towards what time frame?
Through the chair, the issues that we have with the Pākāhu are not necessarily around the leachate or release of leachate. The compliance issues are around the design of the landfill and whether it was built to the specification at the time. So there are questions around the cap, the methodology around irrigating the leachate over the landfill is actually the best methodology that is available for a landfill of this kind. Of course, we're looking at options around treating leachate, but that is really early days for that sort of thinking. So as Mr. Wilson said, our focus is on containment. So in terms of time frame for bringing this into compliance, the response to the compliance question may actually be a variation to the consent based on the best way to manage a landfill of this type.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Dunn.
Yes, so my query in terms of the design is, are we monitoring the impact on groundwater, given that it's not a lined landfill?
Through the chair, yes, we are, groundwater and surface water, and we've been doing that for some time. There's no evidence of any contamination of groundwater, so our focus has been on managing impacts on surface water in consultation and collaboration with the Pākāhu Trust. All
right, thanks for that. Any more comments? Councillor Seymour?
Just one question. is it, or has it been trialled anywhere, the concept of planting it? Because it's probably not a piece of land that's ever going to be used for anything else. So could it be planted in native trees and the leachate re-irrigated back onto that site? I mean, 20 hectares is quite a large site. Has that been considered?
Through the chair, that as you'll see from some of the plans in this report, there is a component of revegetation work around the southeastern corner of the landfill, which is supported by the Pākau Trust. I'd just like to say that actually the process around decision-making around the options that are implemented, it's not just a matter of council coming in and saying this is what we are going to do. This is a collaborative relationship, which is as it should be, and some of this decision-making takes time. There is an active stock grazing activity on the landfill, and that is part of the consent as well. To get to the point of revegetating the whole site, there are some things that would need to be worked through in respect to that.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any more questions at all from councillors? Okay, we've moved by Councillor McLean, seconded by Councillor Burdett. All those in favour? Right. Carried. We'll move on to the Assets and Infrastructure Quarterly Activity Report in its new format. Again, I'd like to congratulate staff for this format. It's really easy to get through, easy to find good questions to ask as well. So, yeah, loving this format. It's fantastic. Councillor Burdett. On page 26.
It says overall progress 5%. I was there at a meeting a week or so ago, and I got a, like David, when he goes home, I got a flare in the ear about the comings and going of contractors. So where are we going with this?
So through the chair, the Onipoto Flumes, we're having an issue there around the budget that's been set aside in the long-term plan and how big the fix is. So the team have been up and we've been up and talked with other contractors around what are the works that we can actually do to fix that. It's not as simple a fix as we'd like, given the amount of stormwater that enters into that area, and as the developments happen, there's more and more going in there. The team are currently working through what design we can actually do and then what within which budgets we're able to accommodate that as well. So we are looking to see how we can move that forward.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, supplementary, even if we sprayed the drains, Dave, to allow that water to get away, would be an improvement where it is now.
In relation to the spraying drains, and it might not be quite the right place, but can I just ask through you, Mr. Chairman, too, Mr. Wilson? Once upon a time, we did have a process of spraying drains, and the Parkinson Street drain in Tolaga Bay is just a disgrace, and I RFS'd that a couple of weeks ago. But, you know, a few years ago, we could expect those substantial drains in townships to be sprayed once a year at least.
So through the chair, we're in spray season now. We've just taken on 2 more casuals into the Land Rivers and Coastal team to pick up our drainage. We weren't able to finish it all at the start of this year before we went into winter, but they're back now full-time spraying now with the Land Rivers and Coastal team. So, except yes, they are behind, but they are working very hard to catch it up.
Thank you.
I just got a, did you want, I've got a question, page 25, total operational expenditure under budget at 66% of forecast expenditure for year to date. This is primarily due to underspending in Tarahiru, Willows, Waikanae, City, Wainui, Paratahi, Manatoki and Muriwai, new drainage areas. Is there a comment on that, please?
Through the chair, for this financial year, we are behind in our spend. We have been cleaning up in Land Rivers and Coastal around from the June events. We are behind. The team are also behind because we're trying to prioritise which works programs we're actually going to go into for this year. In the first year of the LTP, we had included a large number of new things to come in to the Land Rivers and Coastal budget and works for them to be able to catch up. The team is still designing, so they put money in sooner than we're actually able to spend it. We're anticipating that being caught up during this year as we go forward.
you. Councillor Seymour.
Yes, thank you. On page 27, I probably should know this, but has the contract been let for the the first portion of the Waipawa flood control scheme upgrade?
We're in final negotiations with that contractor. We're taking that forward. There's a paper going to council at the December meeting to approve that contractor.
Oh, thank you. And within the context of that, then, do we have some dialogue with them over timeframes? Because we say it's going to start in the summer of 18, 19. I didn't think I missed it. We are not signing it until sometime in December, and December is a write-off and half of January is a write-off. So can we seriously, so is there some timeframes in there that says they have to get started for summer season?
So through the chair, I'm happy to discuss this more in public excluded. For this meeting, it's clear in the paper that's coming to the December meeting around those timeframes. There is some timeframes for them to start as soon as possible, and part of the discussions is with the contractor is around how quickly they can mobilise.
Yep, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I also will say, you know, that this reporting system is really good. It gives us great detail, especially in this committee anyhow, because this is where all the projects with the greatest risk and all the expenditure is. And so we can monitor the progress of expenditure and operating and capital costs. But one thing that I have found a little hard to find in amongst these reports, and I probably could find it eventually, but for example, in the wastewater area, it said that expenditure has been a bit higher than normal, and it's been to do with the review panel with the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, but the savings to keep us on budget are going to be done in the water area. And I guess my question is, how are we going to make those savings? Are we making the savings because we're actually going to work more efficiently and cut down on costs, or are we just going to delay doing some of the work?
So through the chair, the wastewater costs are partly to do with expense. However, for the consent review group, however, that is taken up as part of the budgets that we have, so that area isn't going to overspend. Where we talk about subsidising it is where we've made efficiencies with what we're doing. So, for example, the cure in place renewals have saved us a significant amount of money through the capital expenditure there. Any movement of funds would come back through this committee. So if we were going to delay any project outside of the long-term plan, that would be a decision for this committee to approve or not, depending on where it is. So at this stage, we're still tracking for everything that we've said that we will do is what we're looking to do. Any variation on that, and I'll flag there will be some variations where we will be coming later in the year, where we've had delays with some projects that we'd like to substitute out for next year. So do a project that we have next year and delay the project we had this year. So we are looking at some of those due to not being able to buy plant or equipment, or not being able to purchase land or those kind of things. So those will all come back through the committee.
Thanks very much. Just subsequent to that, Mr. Chairman, yeah, really important that that happens, because at the end of the day, we want the ability to still have the say that if you decided that something takes priority over another, that we actually agree to it, because we might have a different opinion about it. And so we always want to retain the ability to actually maybe make a different decision to staff or management with hopefully good reasons, but without the information we can't do it, and you do give me comfort, and I trust you that you will follow through with that.
Yeah, I've got another question on page 30, at the bottom of 30. Now, I'll just read out part of it. Increasing requests to extract water from Waipawa River and requirements to run pipes across GDC flood control land and assets. Risks to stock banks, licensed berm land, and use of berms for fill material. What is the, I thought our the water extraction had to be a consent from Waipawa. Is this just an increasing request to go to that process, or?
So through you, Chair, what we're increasingly finding is, particularly at the lower end of the Waipawa River, where it's at the salt edge still of the river. There's a lot of land around Manatuki especially where crops are looking to be irrigated, where there's significant investment in things like kiwi fruit, that a lot of those landowners are looking for fresh water. As a rough rule, in order to get fresh water, your pipe has to go in north of the main bridge over the Waipawa River in order to get away from that salt edge. There are a number of companies that are looking to use our Waipawa flood control scheme, so the stop banks, as a corridor to be able to put pipes through. And as water becomes more and more scarce, they're looking for longer distances to be able to put those pipes through in order to pump. They may or may not already have consents in place to take the water, and they're all very mindful of the freshwater plan limits on where they can take and all of those kind of things. However, what we're flagging is that for any approvals to put pipes through, under, over, around our flood control scheme, that they need to actually be engineered to a set level that we're comfortable that those things are going to interrupt our asset that we have. So one of the things we really are keeping an eye on, and it's part of our patrols, is where we find that people have put their assets over the top of ours, and making sure that anything that goes in is engineered to the spec that we would expect it to be so that it doesn't create a weak point. So for example, put a pipe along the side of our flood control scheme, we really want to make sure that there's a casing around it so that it's not going to leak and we end up with a weak point. The other part as well is some of the farms that have approached us have also asked to run pipes in parallel along the top or beside the flood control scheme that's there now. With all of them, we need to make them aware that we're going to be digging it up and moving and changing things. So we don't want their infrastructure to be in the way of where we're about to start construction, to make sure that absolutely fine, we want to enable growth, we don't want to hinder that, but just making sure what goes in is fit for purpose for them and is fit for purpose for us as well.
So that the water take would still be a consent, actual take, if it's not already consented?
Yes, any water take out of the river has to have a consent. This is around approvals to run infrastructure along, down or around our asset, which is the flood control scheme.
Great. Thank you. Is there any other, Mr. Councillor Burdett?
Through Mr. Chairman, on page 30, second from the bottom, Mangahoani River, landslide is impacting the river, threatening the GDC transfer station and increasing erosion on a bend that could threaten homes. On the other side, it said it requires a project for the next long-term plan. Well, to be fair, having been there the other day, I don't think 10 years is going to, because it's already been flooded, David. It does need some action, preventative action anyway.
Through the chair. So we became aware earlier this year about that large landslip coming down and coming across the river. So we have been monitoring that situation. We're just trying to work out what the solution will be, because the slip goes quite a way up the hill, and we're working with our land management team regarding trying to slow that slip down and possibly plant it up. And then it's what we do with the toe of that slip, which is pushing out into the river and causing restriction, which then might cause problems for the transfer station and the properties downstream on the right-hand side. So we haven't got anything in the long-term plan yet, but we'll be looking to put something in the long-term plan to try and provide a solution.
Okay. Thank you for that. And page 31, Mr. Chairman. Emerging challenges. The dollars that sit in the yards in Ruatoria are the ones that sit on the, well, that are not fallen into the river, that are sit on the bank below the Kainanga. There's only one place for those to be, and that is from the banks and from Hedry's yard into the river for the protection and the benefit of all the landowners and Ruatoria. This, I've heard this before, the proposed sale of those things. Yeah. They are part of the loan arrangement in terms of the protection of the Ruatoria Township. So I'm just concerned when I read this. I have spoken to David in the past, and I've talked to Headley. They're sitting in his yard. We really need to apply a bit of look to doing something in terms of the river? Small.
So through the chair, the dollars that sit in the Headley's yard have been sitting there for a number of years, and it's been commented every time that we travel up the coast with you around that those are sitting there in the yard. As Councillor Burdett has said, the dollars were paid for by the Ruatoria scheme to put them there. However, there's not sufficient funding to actually place those dollars into the river yet. That scheme needs to build up more money before we can afford to place them in. So we have the infrastructure sitting there. NZTA have a project that need to use dollars and are looking to use those in the catchment. Part of what we've talked about with Mr. Headley and with NZTA is instead of manufacturing more while ours sit on the side of the river there, to use ours and then create more where we have the budget and have the space to be able to put them in as part of the Waipu catchment plan and looking at the outcomes that are going to be done around restoring the Waipu River. And any decision around that will of course come to council before any action is taken, but it is something that there is an opportunity there for us to use those dollars rather than requiring Mr. Headley to produce more. He still needs, from my understanding of the NZTA project, there is significantly more required for that job than we have sitting there, so they would have to manufacture more. It's around the timing and making sure that we can get the ones that are sitting on the bank into the river, and then looking at seeing how we can afford to place more in for the scheme going forward as it can afford it.
Chairman, can I have David's assurance that before any decisions are taken, we come back to the people that are responsible for that loan, seek their sign-off on that, because it goes right back up the river to Tofu Para, the contributors.
So through the chair, any decision that's made on the use or not use of those dollars would come through the Waipu catchment plan and looking at how that is going to be done around that river protection there. Any decision, as we said, would be made by full council.
Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 30 at the very bottom, with respect to the Wainui erosion continuing, we have had that workshop at Future Tairāwhiti a few weeks ago, and I mean, that's probably quite close timing, but it would be good if this could be updated for next time and tell us what's going to happen next, because there was a loose kind of a workshop there. On page 36, we talk about the transfer stations, and I should have asked Paimana when he was up here before. Have we had the whiteware and metal and huge amount of waste that's in the Tolaga Bay transfer station removed? Because it was to happen last week, I believe.
Yep, through the chair, yep. We have removed all the scrap from Tolaga Bay. We've moved it up to Tokomori Bay, and we have scrap metal company coming through to try and clear out Te Araroa, Tikitiki.
And what about whiteware?
Yep, it's all scrap metal, yeah.
Thank you very much, that's great. And just one further one, on page 51, working with industry and investigating opportunities for greater industry funding to pay for the cost of maintaining and upgrading local roading network. This is on hold, the doing paragraph tells me. So is there just a scant comment that might be able to be made about that to bring us up to date, please?
Through the chair, we're working with a number of industry representatives around different input into roads. We have been working through, if you remember, the committee passed the third-party investment into roading, so we're working through what that means at the moment as well. The complicating factor for us is the PGF funding that's in there as well, and making sure we're not doubling up on chasing things through. And saying that, I know that the team have done another agreement today around industry upgrading a road for us so that we're not doing it as well.
And I couldn't help but wonder if I listened to you explain, Councillor Burdett's, but benefit the issue of the DOLASs around Ruatoria. I mean, that is a really critical piece of work that hasn't been able to continue, and it's really fortunate that there's been no direct flood impact. But I mean, why isn't that something we've applied to the PGF fund for? If there's not enough money to put them in the river, before we think of selling them off to NZTA, because it is something that we've been wanting to continue to do further work on, I might have thought that the PGF fund was there for that kind of infrastructure to protect the township.
So through the chair, the councillors would be aware that we have an application sitting in front of the Provincial Growth Fund that goes today or tomorrow in front of ministers for the Waipawa flood control scheme. The flood control schemes have sat outside the criteria for the PGF up until now, so the only way we've been able to put our Waipawa one through is because we're getting the exception that's been granted for the 7 councils to put it through when Minister Jones changed the wording of it. So we'll be watching to see what implications that has, and we can bring a paper back to the committee if you like around looking at the Ruatoria scheme in light of what happens with that going forward.
And we've got another question. I've got a few here actually, but I'll, this one, page 37, illegal dumping. We've got an increase in illegal dumping, I should say, from last year. So my question is this becoming a major problem again, and where is it mainly happening? Is there an area where is of most concern where illegal dumping is happening, or is it pretty well widespread?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's pretty widespread. We're talking about a trend between 2 years. Fly tipping and illegal dumping is commonplace around New Zealand, and there are various reasons for it, something that we manage as best we can and are as responsive as we can be to it. If we start seeing trends over a number of years, significant trends over a number of years, it may be that there may be some fundamental underlying reasons that we may be a part of that are contributing to it. I think there is a risk around illegal dumping that we need to keep an eye on with the changing face of waste at the moment. That actually New Zealand's going to go through a massive culture change over the next few years around how solid waste is managed, and that's going to put pressure on communities and individuals, and we need to be as far ahead of the game with that as we possibly can be.
So complementary to that, or, yeah. A area that is really widely used for illegal dumping down towards the Waipawa, now it's been bollard and everything. Are we seeing a reduction in illegal dumping in that zone?
Through the chair, it's actually pushed them further down towards the Rivermouth. We have our contractor collecting through all the zones along there, and they've noticed that it's just pushed them back down.
Down further?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Stoltz.
Dave, page 44, the Potai Road extension. You knew I would ask something about that. So when I saw that, I was happy to see, because you and I have met with our dear friend there a few times before, who is very concerned about the Potai-Lytton intersection. So the question I have about this on page 44, you will mostly be looking, and I see there's extended date, so it's good to know what the expectations are, where they will be looking into the link between Nelson and Potai. When you look into that, are you going to look at that whole area and how the traffic flow, and will the Lytton Potai area be included as well? Because that is a bit of a difficult connection.
Just to answer that query, the Potai Road extensions were into 2 parts. This was the first part by the Sunrise Christian School. The second part that starts next year was funded for the next link by Beaver. That was in terms of their parking issue. So those were there were 2 separate projects, but that's where they were just targeted those road connections and not at the intersection. Because, yeah.
But what I'm reading on page 44 talks about they've been appointed to investigate and design a proposed road link between Potai and Nelson. So
that's, yeah, just at the end of Potai, that's where the houses stop, but then you've got by the school, there's that stretch of about
the paper road.
The paper road. Yes. That's what this paper is, to connect that road up and to make it a formal link.
Okay, but then supplementary to that, my question is, once you start looking at that area, are you also, I'm talking about are you also going to then, because we've made lots of promises and discussions and designs about that area, which is, it's a tough area. There's a lot happening in that intersection, and it's busy. So I was just wondering, once we start, I'll ask him in a different way. Are we going to look at the Lytton Popai intersection either? Yeah, or not? Let's not beat around the bush and then say when. But no, I'm going to stop beating around the bush and I'm just going to say, are we ever going to look at the Lytton Popai intersection and the parking there?
Yes.
So then my last supplementary question is, when? You can't answer that with a yes or no.
As part of this study, we will do it.
Thank you. I've taken note. I've taped you. Thank you. I'm happy to move this paper.
Yeah, okay. I've got another question actually, and actually the way the whole new layout of this is, it jumps out at you all these different topics, a lot more than what they did in the past actually, and there's so many questions I have on this paper in particular, and one could reel them off in one fell swoop, I suppose, but that would take a lot of time, but I'm just going to do it a bit ad hoc. So if everyone's happy with that, the next question I've got is Childers Road upgrade from Grey Street to Custom House Street. Roading upgrades to improve heavy vehicle access, parking and cycling connections. This project is programmed for 2019-2020 construction season. Haven't we just done this? Haven't we just spent a lot of money and upgraded this particular section of road? And why would we want to do it again?
Especially just to clarify.
Vehicles, heavy vehicles going, is that something we're going to promote through this access?
That's the last phase on Childers Road. The two last blocks by Harvey Norman's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just those two blocks. Yeah.
The last little part.
Yeah. The last two blocks, they haven't been done.
Right. Okay. No, fine. But are we still promoting heavy vehicle access through that area? Or it's...
Well, trucks are using it at the moment, and at the moment what they're saying is that the big reason why it's been probably over 7 years we've actually done along a gradual increase, it's just that that's the route they use, or as an alternative to Gladstone Road. Yeah. There's no other route where they wanted to try and get to our inner industrial area from that area there.
Yeah. Okay. No, fine. Okay. Is there any other questions? Moved by Councillor Stoltz, seconded by Councillor McLean. All those in favour? Okay, so we go to page 75. And this is the Mayor's paper.
I'll move. Sorry. I think we moved one. Because we have spoken about this so many times before. We have been through this, through 10-year plan tools. I think we know the report, and that's it.
Yep.
So if you're not setting that, I'll set it just nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So have we got any comments, Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, I want to. We've been through this. And we've been through this so many times where we have had stats about what happens on the Kia crossings and how much safer it is. More people are run over on the crossings. We've been through this maybe, where's Dave? 6 or 7 times in the time that I've been on council. So I'm happy to move the receipt of report. But if you really feel strong,
Mr. Chairman, before you put it, if this is the recommendation as it's going tonight, ages ago, I suggested years ago, like Councillor Stoltz is just saying, there are regular signs that say this is a pedestrian-friendly area, and they're in Whakatane. And I raised it with our roading team, different iteration than our team at the moment. And I can't see why we can't get 2 or 3 of those and put them up, because that's what we want the public to understand and get them quite obviously in the main street. And I mean, why those kind of things fall on deaf ears absolutely beats me, but that's not hard to do. There are standard signs recognised by NZTA with appropriate authority. So we should get some of those up in the main street.
And just supplementary by saying, by not moving to A, we are not saying that there's a real issue and we need to relook, like Councillor Seymour said, maybe some other issues. There are, people would like, especially Childers Road, trying to get some older people get across between Rebels Court and Briscoe's, that area. So we do need to maybe do a bit more education on and signs that help people or remind them that there are people trying to cross. But we have been through down this road so many times before.
Yeah.
We will just come back to what we say today.
Councillor Wilson.
Supporting, just noting the report, I'll remind councillors that one of the community projects that is sitting there was around the safety of the Childers Road, Roebuck Road corner, okay? And guess what? There's a pedestrian crossing there and there have been many near misses, and it just shows that a pedestrian crossing does not make it any safer. My impression with the CBD area is that having the pedestrian crossings wouldn't necessarily change the feel of the place. Maybe a few signs making people a bit more aware that we want it more pedestrian friendly, but people are, in my experience, are fairly polite, and if you get on those informal crossings, they will stop for you. And I am told by Mr. Wilson that there's going to be some more work done on those things that will probably make them look even more like informal crossings, and it'll just promote more the fact that it is a pedestrian friendly area.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my comment being a retailer in town and knowing the area extremely well is that you're right, everyone is very courteous. I think by having pedestrian crossings, it gives pedestrians a false sense of security, whether they think they have right of way. And even though traffic is travelling very slow through the middle of town, you might be promoting more accidents than actually decreasing them because of that this false sense of security that a pedestrian crossing does. So I walk Main Street most days, and I've crossed the road, and everyone is so obliging. People stop as soon as they see people coming. I'm watching all old people, and I haven't really witnessed any accidents begging to happen or anything untoward. It is a very user-friendly area. I don't think anyone travels 50k through the area either. Everyone is travelling at least 30k and really aware that it is a pedestrian-friendly area. But I think I agree, a bit of signage to advise that it is a pedestrian-friendly area would certainly help. But that's where I sit at this stage. Councillor Stoltz, then Councillor Payne.
Just coming back to, I remember one discussion we had when they were talking about across Countdown in Gladstone Road, when that crossing was done, and there was a Kia crossing, and the same in the Roebuck Road by the dairy. And I know, as a mother of kids who goes on bikes, that is the areas I tell them to use, because you can go halfway, there's proper barrier, and then in those Kia crossings, I know overall that pedestrian crossings are being replaced, because it also gives someone who's on a wheelchair the possibility to get halfway over. There's a real barrier that stops you, and then you go over again. So we've definitely moved in that direction in the last few years.
Okay, Councillor Payne.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Foster, that driving through the main street's a lot safer, especially with the diagonal parking. You're watching, you see reversing lights come on, and yeah, it can be treacherous. The worst part of that is Peel Street at the lights. You're going through the lights and the pedestrians screaming out in front of you. I mean, that's the most dangerous part of Peel Street, is where the lights are.
Yeah, where people, controlled.
Actually, there should be some more control there, because people just ignore the lights. The pedestrians are ignoring them. Yeah. And it's quite scary for motorists. Yeah. Just a thought.
Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, I'm still pro pedestrian crossings. I've heard what you've all said, and we have probably one of the busiest pedestrian crossings at Woman Road at Balance Street, and I think it does a great job of helping people across the road. And I think they have their value. The past isn't a good indicator to the future, and I know there's no desire around the table to have pedestrian crossings in the CBD, but I'm just going to say I'm for them. And I don't think they have the hazards that you're all saying if we're going to use Ormond Road, which is a very busy road, as an example. And I'm not going to try and convince your mind, I'm just saying that I've got a different view. And I'm happy to go.
Yeah, well,
Perhaps Mr. Wilson can tell us what's planned, since Ms. Stoltz knows what's planned in the rest of the stuff. Done some confidence that we're doing something.
Through the chair, we're working through the plans at the moment for the Gladstone Road upgrade. So as you're aware, we did the stretch from Derby Street up to Roebuck Road the last financial year. The next stretch to be done is the CBD proper, so from Derby Street right back down to Custom House Street. That's due to be done before 2019 and is part of the major push of works that will happen in the new year once we get the asphalt plant here. So that is looking at being resurfaced. As part of that, we're taking on board the comments, as Councillor Seymour has said, around signage and making sure that's safe, but also making sure that we're changing the crossings that are there now. And I know that the team are looking, probably the easiest example is think of Napier CBD with the crossings that they have there, where they're slightly raised and they're paved. They stand out really obviously, so they're not pedestrian crossings, but they are ones that you do have to slow down for as you go through. So it's trying to keep that low speed environment. Part of the issue that we have with pedestrian crossings and staff in the CBD is the traffic, the flow-on effect that hits the traffic, sorry. So if there are pedestrian stoppings that cars has to stop for, it's going to end up on Wainui Road quite quickly with the backup and the flow of traffic. It's a low-speed environment, and the safety engineer's advice is for what we are doing, it's the safest way to do it forward. So that's the plan that we've got coming forward, and that will come back through the committee as those plans are developed up and as that then gets put into action next year.
Oh, no, I don't want to be, I just want to follow up that. A new development has been, instead of having to have raised areas that probably cost a lot of money, is the new painting you can do, which looks like 3D. Have we investigated that as an option that may be cheaper for safety to cross the road? So it looks like a pedestrian crossing, but it's not.
Well, there we are. That's a sneaky one.
Yes, the team are looking at all of the options for what we've got going.
Councillor Swans.
Just for the right of reply, I just want to clarify, Councillor Dunn, we are not against pedestrian crossings. We are for appropriate pedestrian crossings. As you will recall, in the last few years, the crossing in front of Girls Eye was adjusted because it kept it backlogged the traffic right back nearly to Campion. So I think in the what is happening is that pedestrian crossings are just changing to be more useful and safe, like 3D lighting. Anyway, I think we can vote now.
Well, you guys need to convince the mayor because he's still got his paper on.
I think we've thrashed this to death actually. Oh, okay, Councillor Burdett.
Pedestrian crossings have been placed.
They do, Bill. But
Placed in the appropriate place, they do work.
that's why we changed it.
For as long as I've been on council, the main street going both ways and Peel Street have been a concern. And I happen to agree with them on this one.
Hello. Well, we'll put it to the vote then. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? We're noting the report. Oh, right, we don't need to do that. Okay. All right, next we've got public excluded. So I'll move that we public excluded. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Thank you, mate.